All right. Hello, hello, everybody. Ooh, that was a quick response on the little notifier there. So let's go ahead and give you a link to the video. No, get out of here. Where's my homepage? It did this to me this morning too. We're just going to go to youtube.com. I need to give you the correct and proper linkaroni to the video. Excellent. Here it
Morning
is.
too.
We're just going to go to
Streamception.
youtube.com. No, I
need to
closed
give
the
you
wrong
the
window.
correct and
Well, this is going to be an embarrassing comedy of errors today. It's just going to be one of those days where it's going to be an embarrassing comedy of errors. Alright. I have all my video game stuff on there. Don't look too closely. Goodness gravy. Yep, there we go. The link to live broadcast. Here is the link. Link to this evening's live broadcast. Thanks for sticking with me, folks. Just need to send this out so that everybody can watch it. Okay, sorry about that. But it looks like everything's going pretty good, except I need to be on YouTube as well because I need to be able to see chat. So tell you what, let's go and go there, and I'll drag this over out of our way. We'll mute that. Okay. We should be ready to get started to begin to commence. Oh my goodness. Goodness. Let's swap that. And let's disable that. Okay. Excellent. Not excellent. Something's wrong off camera here. What is going on? Oh my goodness. There we go. Live stream. It's only been 2 minutes. So, at least according to this. Alright. Actually, it's been about 3 minutes, but that's okay. Alrighty, so anyway, today we're talking about persuasion basics. So Liz went over this morning, she went over how to build an argument, claim, data, warrant. I encourage you to see the earlier video that was published today also, so that you can get that information. Today I'm going to talk about the basic ways that speeches or persuasive speeches are organized. We're going to talk a little bit about the requirements for this persuasive speech. It is modeled after the group speech, but it is not the group speech. So there'll be lots of things that you need to cross out or otherwise take note of in order to do this assignment. I'm going to create a Word document as I talk about it tonight and post that as well so that you can have that information written down for you. But otherwise, we're doing a particular kind of organizational pattern is the skill we're practicing with this speech. Thank you for joining me, everybody. I see there's like 3 or 4 people in. We haven't necessarily gotten that started yet, so we're still just kind of talking about the pattern of the lecture, so here we go. So persuasion basics, and what the anatomy of a persuasive speech look like. So all persuasive speeches contain several key parts. The first notable part about a persuasive speech that sets it apart from other types of speeches is something called a proposition. All right, you can think of it as your thesis. It's a statement of what should be true or done, and this is the overall, overarching thing that you want your audience to understand or remember. So you can have different arguments or different claims that you feel supports your proposition, which is ultimately how you organize it. We'll talk about the pattern here in a second, but the proposition is like your overall thesis. As Liz went over this morning, we don't necessarily need to dwell on it anymore right now anyway, but the propositions all come in basically three areas: value, policy, and fact. Again, a value is something that's kind of like an opinion or conclusion about something's worth, and it can be literally like the Nintendo Switch is too expensive, i.e. something's literal value. You could also talk about something like the new Legend of Zelda game is a bad video game. And they could also even talk about value propositions, could also talk about right and wrong. So value propositions are kind of like a catch-all category in some senses. There's a lot of things that it can cover. Policy, however, is very specific in that you're proposing something be done. All right. Smoking should be banned on campus. That's a great example that Liz had from this morning, and that's exactly the kind of thing in a policy. You can tell if something's a policy or not. Is anyone else having issues with sound? That is a good question. Let me type. She probably can't hear me talk if she's having problems with sound, so maybe I should just type into chat. Try refreshing the window. Let me make sure my software is indicating it's receiving volume. Okay. Other people say that it's not a problem, so we'll see what happens. Any case, policy is about something specific happening. In fact, it's about trying to prove something true or false using observable information. All right, so and it's something that could definitively be proven. So, for example, a fact could be something like 500,000 people a year die from smoking. And you could either prove that true or false by counting up. Oh boy, this is morbid. But you could prove that true or false by counting up the coroner's reports that indicate that someone died of a smoking complication. So because there's only so many, right? And so you could count those up and determine whether or not it's a fact. So those are the three kinds of propositions. The next thing that a persuasive speech has is it starts with a proposition, and we move right on to what they call a position on the proposition. Boy, what a tongue twister. But either the speaker is for or against the proposition, and often this is what the speaker wants to connect to the audience. In other words, you want your audience to agree with you. There are very rare, and I don't necessarily recommend doing it this way, but there are times when people give a persuasive speech in which they encourage the audience to disagree with the speaker. So that, in other words, you would go up and you would say, "I believe that smoking should be banned in restaurants. Now, here are all the reasons why we shouldn't do this." It's a very facetious way to go about advocacy. But it does have its uses. For example, the presentation, A Modest Proposal, which you may have read in maybe an English class, was, oh gosh, now I forget his name because I need it. But a British member of Parliament was discussing a very sarcastic solution to the Irish potato famine, in which he seriously, quote unquote, proposed that they allow the Irish to eat their own children. Because that would both solve the population growth crisis and it would also solve the starvation crisis. Obviously, his real intent wasn't to have you do that or have anyone do that, but it was considered kind of artful, and people still study that speech in English classes to this day. But nonetheless, for the purposes of this class, I would recommend that you always take the stance that you are in favor of whatever proposition that you are going to do your speech about. All right. It takes a lot of personality and People need to understand your personality in order to pull off the other one. But I just wanted to kind of point that out. A little bit of a sidetrack there. But you should have a position on the proposition, and for this class, you should always choose that you are in agreement with whatever you are proposing. Okay. Whoop. All right. The next part, after you talk about your proposition and your position on it, you explain your reasons and examples that you want to do. And typically this comes in a certain phrasing. You identify a problem that's related to your topic. You outline why that problem exists or why it won't fix itself. And then you detail possible solutions and you ask the audience to act in some fashion. All right. And that's really the basic broad strokes of what we're about to go over. Is that you say, I think we should stop smoking in restaurants, and to convince people to do that, you're probably going to talk about a problem with smoking in restaurants. Then you want to outline why that problem exists. That smoke is cancerous or whatever. And then you may detail a possible solution, which would probably be your proposition to stop smoking in restaurants. And then you might ask the audience to do something like sign a petition to present to the town council. So that's kind of the basic broad brushstrokes of the persuasive speech. So let's go ahead and look at an example. I think we have enough people watching live to do this. An example speech here from a fun cartoon character in which he is trying to convince the audience of, again, a proposition. We'll talk about what these all are. Let's go ahead and click on the link. Oh, can I not click on it from this view? Oh, gosh darn it. It's going to do that to me again, isn't it? Yeah, it is. Doot. All right, click.
When email comes to town, you know it's like a rainstorm in your browser.
Now this is unusual. There we go.
When email comes to town, you know it's like a rainstorm in your browser. They're super bad. It bugs me how your email show doesn't have a theme song. If you did have a theme song, your show would be a whole lot cooler. Jonathan Shaheen, Ontario, Canada. Ooh, a little south of the border flavor. Dear Sufferbag, it bugs me how your face doesn't have a not tons of acne. If it did have a not tons of acne, you would be a whole lot cooler. Look, you don't know what you're talking about, Shaheen. Theme songs are just an excuse for showmakers to make less show. I'm sure viewership would triple if I had one of those crappy cartoon theme songs that bludgeons you over the head with the blunt end of the show's premise.
Strong, bad is a WrestleMan. He's the email checking guy in the land. He checks real emails from the net. He's got two brothers and the cheat is bad. There's nobody dumber than Old Star Runner on the Strong, Bad Email Show.
And the ratings have gone through the roof. And let's not forget the life-affirming pop ballad type theme song. Probably sung by some variety of Neville.
You and me, babe, living for dreams, life for love, drinking for free, sitting on top of the road, romance, sharing and carrying it out. Memories good.
And of course the best clips they show are from the unaired pilot that you'll never see.
Memories serving you down.
And just when you think you finally get to start watching some of the actual show, now you get to watch a commercial.
Do you make butt at your current job? Do you want to make twice butt? A shady online degree is just 4 clicks away at CGNU Online University. Most colleges take 4 years to complete. At CGNU, 1 year equals 1 click.
I got 14 degrees while on my lunch break. Now I can legally prescribe marriages in the state of Kansas.
Enroll now and join the University Evolution E-Day. Well, today. That last one didn't quite work out.
We'll be right back with more Strong Bad emails.
Do you want to cut your own arm off? Now don't worry. Just in case you were hoping to get gypped out of another minute of actual show, you get to hear the jazzy instrumental version over the end credits. And on the off chance that you actually wanted to hear the theme song, we've taken care of that too.
Coming up later on 3 is 4 tonight, join Mandy, Brandy, Andy, and Scourge as they learn how to give a care. But first, they're tiny, they're toony, they're all a little loony. It's the Cheat Commandos.
You see, you're basically asking me to dedicate 2 minutes of my 3 to 5 minute email show to what is essentially a commercial for something you're already watching. And besides, I give you people a new email song every freaking week. Allow me to leave you with the old standard, when email comes to town, you know it's like a rainstorm in your browser. When email comes to town, you know it's like a rainstorm in your browser.
Next up on Powered by the Cheat, Strong Man gets his own talk show, and his first guest is hilarity.
All right. So let's go ahead and talk about this and with the people who are watching live. What was the proposition that Strong Bad had put before him? Try to map this out just a little bit. And hello, everybody that just joined. I saw the viewer count tick up. We just watched a sample Persuasive presentation, and I asked the people who were here what the theme songs. Corey, you are correct. The proposition was specifically it was that Strong Bad should have a theme song. Now, what was his position on having a theme song? What was Strong Bad's position on doing a theme song? All right. Yes, it was that he did not think he wanted a theme song, and you're right. The reason is because he felt that it would take up too much time of his show, among other reasons. So as you can see, even in this funny cartoon, there was still that same basic structure that we just talked about. It starts with a proposition. They explain your position on it, and they give reasons why, usually revolving around identifying problems. Now, this one didn't have a solution to it, or rather the solution, you could say, is implied in that he felt that the best thing to do would be to not invite those problems by keeping his show the same. And then he rationalizes that by saying, I already do a song every week anyway. So that's just a quick example of how this basic pattern works. Now there's a more complex pattern that I would actually like for you to use for this particular speech. And it's called Monroe's Motivated Sequence. And Monroe believed that persuasion or genuine persuasion occurred when people, the story that you're telling the audience has two major movements. One is that you make the audience feel uncomfortable with the way the world is. The second movement is that you give them some kind of relief. And so he developed this sequence of types of things you should talk about and the order you should talk about them in order to inspire someone or motivate someone to change their beliefs or their actions. So, yes, these songs will be available to print later. That's a good question. I'm going to post all this stuff up. And like I said, I'll also create a Word document by the end of the presentation about this specific assignment as well. But anyway, and here's Monroe's motivated sequence. So you have kind of just like our outline that we had before. You have your topic, your specific purpose, and your thesis statement at the top of your outline. And then you have your introduction, which it's very similar to what you had just done. One of the first things you do in a persuasive introduction is that you want to focus attention on the problem or proposition before you. This could be right here again. This could be the proposition as well. Monroe continually talks about it being as a problem because, again, in his mind, persuasion happens when people are made to feel uncomfortable. So if you can identify a problem with the way the world is, it's much more effective than simply giving people information. Next, you want to tie that problem to the audience. So especially if you're giving a speech like, you should donate to a charity that does charitable work in Africa. You want to tie that problem or the problems that maybe Africa is facing or maybe that the charity tries to address, try to tie it to the audience in some way. So talk about how things either affect the audience or maybe a benefit that the audience might experience as somebody that's concerned about the problem that you have identified. But you want to tie it to the audience in some way. The next part, just like in your last speech, you have the credibility, what we call the credibility material, in which you will say something like, I researched this problem with Tom's shoes in Africa for 3 weeks, and as a result of that research, I present my position and urge you to agree with me that blah, blah, blah. All right, so the credibility material just says you are a credible person to listen to about this topic. And then you have the thesis and your preview, right? So you would say something like your actual, what you want the audience to do would be like, I would like for you to stop buying Tom's shoes, and I have 3 overall reasons why, and then you would list them out in your preview. The next part of your Monroe's motivated sequence outline is going to be your body. And Monroe called it your need step. This is where you make the audience feel uncomfortable with the way the world is. All right? So it kind of has a couple of things in it. You have one under your body, or your first main point, is a statement of need or need for action. So you would describe why you need to act. Maybe in our new example about Tom's shoes in Africa, you could talk about how providing free shoes to Africans discourages local industry. All right. Then you would describe the problem, and this is where you go more in depth about why the problem exists. Again, you would go into signs, symptoms, or effects of the problem. And again, I encourage you to find effects of the problem that might impact your audience, not just other people, but the actual audience that you are giving your speech to. And then you would probably have examples, all right, narrative or testimony. And a narrative means a story, so you can think of it like an anecdote or a short little story. And testimony is quotations from a knowledgeable source, okay? And an example would maybe be a true thing that happened, all right? It would be a true thing that happened. So you could tell a story, have testimony, a direct quote from somebody, or some kind of identifying something that really happened at some point. Generally, I recommend that you should have, if you are going to use this pattern, which you should have a broad statistic that involves your need, followed by a very specific example. So, for example, 400 million people suffer from drain clogging hair, and more specifically, you would give us an example like, my own Uncle Harry drowned in a bathtub clogged with hair because he couldn't drain the bathtub fast enough. So that would be a good way to do it because it gets both the factual, broad, kind of dry statistics out there, but it also has that like nice emotional element to it when you talk about an actual example or something that happened. This would also be a good way to use testimony as well. If you have a great kind of quote that maybe explains or makes the data, this 400 million here, seem more understandable. All right. Oops, sorry, hit my mic there. The next main point, it would present the solution that satisfies the need. So you would describe what that is. You would also you should also detail how the solution satisfies the need and how specifically that solution could be implemented. And you should really come up with a plan of action or steps that you would like to see taken in order to resolve your issue. So, and sometimes these can be very simple. A lot of these speeches, you will spend most of your time on main point 1, developing the problem and why it needs to change, and all different examples and a lot of different statistics about the problem. And then your main point 2, which is the solution, is usually pretty simple, like stop buying Tom's shoes. And then you really just need to explain how that solution will resolve the problem of limited industry in Africa, for example. And that would be a shorter main point, and that is entirely fine. And again, it doesn't matter if there's so many steps in here. Like, you don't need an A or a B and a 1 and a 2. You just have to do these things. You describe a solution, explain how the solution satisfies the need, and then explain how the solution can be implemented. And you don't necessarily need 2 things for every part of it. All right, you just need to make sure that the top 3 things here are things that you do. And that, again, that usually creates a shorter main point than what's up here, and that's fine. You just don't worry about if it seems like really heavy on the problem stuff. Next, you need to have your conclusion, or rather, instead of next, you should say last, in which you summarize your main points, just like the last speech. You list out everything that you talked about, your different examples that you thought were important. Again, you tie it back to the audience. You always want the audience to feel like they are being impacted by the issue at hand. And then you finally have the concluding remarks, which for this speech would be something for the call for action. You could urge them to buy a product. I'm not sure why I didn't put the other bullet point down here, but you could urge them to sign a petition. It should be some kind of practical action that someone watching your video could take. So again, you could urge them to buy something or to not buy something. You could urge them to sign a petition. You could urge them to vote a particular way if you have a political problem or where that is the solution. Let's see, what else have people done? Generally, between those 3 things, I think that really covers almost all the speeches I've heard in my career. But there are other solutions as well that, it's as imaginative as you want. But your concluding remarks would be where you really drive home the last things that you say should be what you want the audience to do. The other thing that you can ask them to do is to believe something as true, or to accept something as true. So, for example, if you're trying to convince someone who smokes a lot and they say, nah, it's not going to impact my health, I'll be fine. At the end of your presentation, you want to, your concluding remarks would be so given all this information, Cousin Johnny, I really think you should believe that smoking is unhealthy. And hopefully, if you did everything right, Cousin Johnny says, oh my goodness, you're correct. I do think that smoking's dangerous. I should probably stop. That's the organization pattern for this particular speech. All right. So now I'm just kind of looking at the clock here and seeing how much time we got. Time. Excellent. Let me just get my nothing's quite. I had the book turned even to a different page than I needed. Having one of those evenings, you know. Now let's go ahead and flip to. There is an outline, sample outline for this speech in your workbook. I am merely attempting to find it on what page it is for you so that you can go right to it. I am not being very successful. This book by now is so... I can't even find the table of contents in it. That's how crazy it is right now. It's the skeletal outline for the group speech, which should be on or around page 57, depending on what edition of the book you've got. Let's go ahead and take a gander at it just to make sure. Yes, and that is exactly what you find here. It is the sample outline. And again, it's a sample outline. I believe here it has 3 main points, but it has everything that we just talked about. And I knocked my mouse around, so... No. Alright, well, what's going on here? Oh, goodness gravy. It's gotta... There we go, that's how we do it. So yeah, page 57 or around about there is a skeletal outline for the group speech, and this is actually the same stuff that we just went over. It is a little bit more elaborate in that it's got 3 needs and a couple solutions, but it has all this. It's the same. You do not need to have 3 needs. You can have 1, you can have 2, you could have 4. All right. This is just a sample to help you get started. The only real difference here that I can tell is that it uses the word visualization instead of solution, and then immediately after it uses the word visualization, it says benefits of adopting the solution. So that's the only difference that I can see. So the skeletal outline is good, so you can kind of refer to that if you have questions as well. And again, I will post this PowerPoint on our Blackboard. Are there any questions before I move on and actually talk about the assignment formally, like how many minutes it's supposed to be and how many resources you need to have, that kind of stuff? Alrighty, well, no one seems to have any questions, so let's go ahead and talk about the actual assignment itself. Let's go ahead and bring up my Word document here. Okay, so we're modeling this assignment after the group speech, in which it's really just a persuasive presentation in which you convince the audience to do or believe something they don't already know or already do or believe. So basic basic goal of the assignment: get audience to believe or accept something they don't already believe, accept, or do something they do not already do. Okay. Now, you're probably wondering, how will we know what they already do or don't do? And that is a great question that has plagued many a student in a persuasive speech writing class. For right now, we're just going to make certain assumptions about the group. In other words, we can assume, for example, that they probably do brush their teeth every day. But you can also kind of assume that maybe they don't do it all that well, because you have information that suggests that most Americans brush their teeth improperly. For example, if that's what your topic was, you looked up some information about it and you found that statistic, you can kind of assume that this class probably falls into that area. I hope that kind of makes sense in that when you identify a topic, we're brainstorming it in the forum, and when you kind of settle upon a topic and you do just a little bit of research about it, you can kind of assume that if you find a resource that says most people don't do this, then you can go ahead and assume that the class doesn't do it, or does do it, or whatever the statistic indicates. At least for right now. We will do a survey, but here's the thing. You need a topic on which to survey the audience before you design your survey. It's one of those, it's the chicken or the egg type deal. And for right now, we're just going to go ahead and declare that for all that we know, this class is a totally average class of American students. And so if you have any information that most Americans do or do not do X, assume that that is true for the class as well. Now, that'll get us started at least. All right. So anyway, that's the basic goal of the assignment: is get the audience to do something they don't already do or believe something they don't already believe. The time limit is going to be drastically different from your book. It is going to be between 4 to 6 minutes. All right. Now, originally this was a group speech, which was around like 12 to 18 minutes, but we don't need to worry about that. So time limit is 4 to 6 minutes. You should have 4 sources. And again, I don't care about type of sources. I don't care if you have a book, a magazine, and a yada yada. Just have 4 published sources. All right. And similarly, you should have, not sources again. Sorry, citations. 4 citations. So that's 4 times where you say, according to so-and-so, writing in whatever on whichever day. So you have 4 of those citations. As you can see, it's 1 citation per source, at least. As far again as your note cards, your textbook mentions note cards a lot. Again, assuming that we are an in-person class, but we are not. So again, your preparation notes are, anything you can read from well off camera without being distracting. All right, that's kind of the requirement there. All right. So if it's going to be a bulletin board, if you're going to use note cards, that's fine. Now here's also a big change from the book, and it says that a presentational aid is required. And for online students, that can be very difficult because it requires you usually to have a computer running in the background, and also that you're recording your video using probably your computer. So how do you do that? Other than renting a camera or finding a camera in the library that they'll give you to borrow, there's not really any way to do that well, and I don't necessarily feel comfortable assigning you something where you have to get additional technology. So the presentational aid is turned in as an assignment. But does not need to be present during the speech. Okay, so I am going to have you do a quick visual aid as part of this assignment. We will talk about that on a separate week, about how to do a good visual aid and what this visual aid should probably have in it. We'll talk about that. But what you need to know is that you're not going to be responsible for having it with you during your speech, or having it visible anyway during your speech, because like I said, it would require like 2 computers, or a computer and a camera, or a projector and a camera. It gets really elaborate, and I would rather we not get into that. And of course, you would turn everything into the link on Blackboard. And so, as a quick reminder, either I need the raw video file. All right, so you record your video using whatever method you want, and you could just attach that to the link on Blackboard, or you upload it to YouTube. And you copy and paste the link to the video in the text box of the Blackboard assignment link. Okay. That way I can have your name associated with it, because I know many of you have YouTube accounts that are not your real name, right? It's like Silent Steel or something like that, and I don't know who that is necessarily. So if we keep everything on Blackboard, that way I'll have an easier time identifying who has and who hasn't turned in their assignment. Okay, so are there any questions about that? I think these are all the details. At least these are all the detail items that I have in the workbook. Are there any other questions or concerns about the assignment so far? And again, this week our goal in terms of getting ready for this assignment is really just to brainstorm and find a topic that you are comfortable enough to invest more time in. That's kind of our goal for this week, but these are the other details of the assignment. All right, I'm still here. I saw that my viewer count went up. I'm not absent. We are waiting if there are any questions about the assignment so far. All right, I'm going to go ahead and post all of these things then. Do we have to have an audience? That's a good question, and no. I think in the beginning of the semester I indicated, and I even probably wrote on the syllabus, that some speeches will require you to have an audience. But as I've been going through and listening to tales from other instructors, because please remember, this is my really my freshman attempt at doing an online speech class. Last semester I worked with the high school group online, and that was a bit of a different situation. But anyway, just from hearing people trying to get their students to organize an audience, it just seems like it's more trouble than it's worth. So as long as I have control over this class, I don't think we'll need to organize an audience. We will, however, be showing these speeches to your peers, because there will be a peer review assignment associated with this speech. All right, so I mean, you will have an audience, but you don't need one on camera with you. And maybe if you search for like sample Comm 210 videos, you'll see people have videos that are like, well, I'm Greg Johnson, and here is my audience. And they'll spin the laptop around, and they'll show you other people sitting in the room. You do not have to do that. We will simply meet that requirement of having an audience by having a peer review type process for this particular assignment. So you don't worry about creating an audience on camera. All right, any other questions? Okay, well, I waited a little bit. It doesn't seem like it, so tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and sign off, and I'm going to immediately post this Word document and the PowerPoint that we just went over to our course content section of Blackboard. I'm still looking at the chat to see if there's any last-minute question here. It doesn't seem like it. We did kind of go on for 43 minutes, so that's awesome. Please let me know if you have any more questions. I do believe I'm caught up on all my emails. I know it was a weird situation in which we had spring break, and then I had you do the speech the week that we came back, and so there wasn't a broadcast or anything associated with that. And there were lots of questions waiting for me in my email box, which was awesome that you are interacting with me. And like I said, I do believe I am caught up. If this is not true, we were we were gone for a while, so if I missed your question, it wasn't anything personal. Please go ahead and re-email me, and I should respond to you. Is this your last speech? Actually, it's our second to last one. Our second to last one. We have another month after we're done with this where we'll turn in a speech. And it'll be a longer persuasive speech with higher minimum time, more resources. But by that point, it will hopefully be more second nature to you. And I do hope, and like I said, I haven't quite reviewed all of the informative speeches. I've basically gone through and tried to just find where your speeches are. The thing I'm doing this weekend is actually to sit down with some popcorn and my rubric, the rubric from the textbook, rather, or the workbook, I should say, and grade your speeches. So. But anyway, I feel like you are, from what I can see, I feel like you are getting closer, more comfortable with the technology. That's where I was headed with that. But anyway, it'll become second nature enough that it won't seem, hopefully it won't seem that intimidating. So we'll have a couple few weeks to work on this, and then a couple few weeks to work on the other one, and then we're done. Class does end, I do believe it is the last week of April / first week of May. And my vision is that we will be finished comfortably before I need to turn in the grades that week. So. Okay, I will look in my spam email for your email, Punky. If I don't find it... See, I'm trying to think. To make sure that I get it, go ahead and send me another email, but if you can try to send it to me, and I'm guessing maybe the problem is that it's coming from a non-BSU email address. That might be why it's in spam. Assuming it is in spam. So if you haven't received it by then, or rather, if I don't respond to you like immediately tonight, go ahead and send it to me again. Try it from your Ball State email account, the one that has @bsu.edu on it, and that should definitely make sure that it's in my inbox. But I should, and if that's true for anyone else, please go ahead and do that as well. If you send me emails from an external address, like, so-and-so from gmail.com, there's a very high probability it gets into my spam folder, and faculty spam folders are just jam-packed. Unless we know what we're looking for, it's kind of pointless to check it regularly. We get probably like 100 messages in there a day, no fooling. So anyway, I sent it from Blackboard. Okay, well I'll look that up then. I should have that. Maybe I thought I responded to it or didn't, or thought I would be great for another time for some reason. I'll respond to that tonight. If you already sent to and it was through Blackboard, I should have that in my inbox. I'll look for it immediately after the broadcast. Okay, so Corey, you were also in the same boat. Oh man, maybe I went, maybe I just kind of took an extra vacation, it looks like. I'll be sure to look for your email as well, Corey. All right, seems like I've got some work to do, so I suppose there aren't many questions about the actual assignment so far, so I'll be on the lookout for your emails tonight, and I'll post this stuff up so you guys can get started. Thanks so much, guys, and I'm going to get started on answering those emails. Have a great evening. I'm going to kind of hang around and... Okay, yeah. I'm going to hang around so that I can stay in live chat, but otherwise I'm going to turn the video off and get that stuff started for you. All right, thank you so much.